Hello and welcome to the Valley. Today I am your host, Janet Michael. It is VDOT Day, so we are back on the Zooms with Ken Slack. He is the communications specialist for the Stanton District of VDOT. We talk road projects, road updates, and he gives me grief for not driving on the interstate, all in fun.
And it's scenic too, and it's depending on the time of day or week, it's not always the most relaxing drive, but it is a lovely stretch of roadway.
We were joking before we started recording the irony of someone who would prefer to never leave her house doing a show with VDOT every couple of months. The irony is not lost on me.
And perhaps when we're talking about these projects, if I can win you over, Janet, if you can be convinced of the virtues of what we're trying to do out there, then anybody will be.
I
All
will
right.
tell you, my travels took me to Mount Jackson earlier last week. And so that meant Route 11, of course, but it meant that I got to look over the overpass as I crossed over 81 going into Strasburg. And it looks really, really good. You guys are making some progress widening 81 there at Strasburg.
Yeah, absolutely. Contractors are pretty close to the halfway point, just shy of that 50% mark. I don't know how you measure exactly how much percentage you're done on a project because you never know what weather and equipment and materials may bring. But the project is progressing nicely and on schedule to be finished in the fall of 2028. They may sound like a long way off, but again, we're just about at the halfway point. You've probably seen a lot of the grading that's been going on there. Most of the work, of course, is taking place in the median. We've also been doing a fair amount of bridge work with replacing the southbound bridge over Cedar Creek and also widening the southbound bridge over the CSX Railway. And pretty soon we will be finished with phase one, as they say, on both of those bridges, which basically means the new portion of the bridge that's to your left, if you're going down southbound 81, will be finished. We've got the beams in place, concrete, the parapet walls, all that good stuff. And that will allow traffic to shift to the left, start using that newly built portion of the bridges and the roadway that's through that stretch of road. And that is when contractors move on to phase two, and that's working on the right side of the road. So that traffic shift right now, we're looking at late summer, possibly right after Labor Day when that happens.
When you're doing big projects like that, the widening in particular, do you do all of it as you go, or do you get that section done, open it, and then move on to the next section? How do you guys typically do those widening projects like that?
It's a whole lot more complicated than I, as a communications guy, can probably explain. But what I will say is that a lot of these projects are really their schedule and their sequence of work is a lot of it's defined by the bridges. Because if you're just widening a section of roadway and there's not a whole lot of challenges as far as steep terrain and things like that, it doesn't take all that long. But when you have to replace or rehab and widen bridges, that's what takes much longer than people might expect. And of course, you have the challenge of keeping traffic moving while you're doing it. In the case of Strasburg, the Cedar Creek Bridge is sort of on the northern part of the project, and then a little, probably around the midway point of the Strasburg area widenings where the CSX Bridge is. Crews are working on both of those bridges simultaneously while there's also a whole lot of grading and paving going on. So it's not as simple as we're going to start here and work our way south or work our way north in some cases. It's more about the type of work that needs to be done, the kind of resources and time that are required to do that.
Everybody enjoys a project like the Aranda Park and Ride. You touched on it when we had our last conversation, but that seems like a pretty simple, clean cut project to make a parking lot bigger and give people more access. Not a lot of traffic that you probably have to worry about there.
Yeah, and the nice one there is because sometimes when we expand a park and ride, we're trying to work around making sure that we can keep it open. The advantage here is that we are going to be basically building a new section of the Aranda Park and Ride right across Aranda Drive, right on the other side of the road. What the contractors are planning on doing is building the new section of the park and ride, then, of course, opening that to the commuters to start using that portion. Then they flip over and basically rehab and improve the existing portion of the project. So, that one's a lot easier to deal with because we're not going to be making, like you said, a lot of big traffic restrictions, not really even any restrictions on the folks that use that commuter lot. But it's a really nice project because we're roughly tripling the number of parking spaces out there. It's a little over 40 now, and it's going to be about 130 when it's finished. It's going to be better lighting, a marked crosswalk that will connect the two portions of the Aranda Park and Ride. Work is going to be starting at the beginning of August. We've already awarded the contract for it. Should be ready for folks to fully use it by the spring of 27.
I joked with you when we talked about it last time that I didn't even know that it was there, that I vaguely remembered when you said the name, "Wait, I've seen that street sign somewhere. Where have I seen that street sign?" And now every time I go that way, I look there to see, "Oh, so that's where it is." I did not realize that many cars could or would park there if they had the space. That's a really busy spot then, I assume.
It is a busy spot, but it's a lot like some of the park and ride lots that we've been improving. Some of them don't really have a great delineation for the spaces. They're not marked very well, or the markings have faded, or it's a gravel lot. And so sometimes people will have this much space between the cars and sometimes this much space between the cars, and it really cuts down on the utility of it. So it's going to be a really nice facility when it's done. And you said you don't notice it, but there are people, if you don't use a commuter lot, if you don't have that need because you're 15 minutes from work, then perhaps you don't even realize it's there. But on the VDOT website, we have a map with links and GPS directions to all the park and ride lots. So if you're planning those uses, and a lot of people use them, the facilities are right there for folks. And this is going to be tons better. The lighting is going to be much, much nicer out there. It's just going to be like night and day. We've seen a couple of these other projects down in the Waynesboro area and in Rockingham County. So this is going to be a big improvement that's coming to the Strasburg area.
When you talk about having those links on your website, I always like to try and work this into our conversation because I am so incredibly impressed with those project pages that you guys have on your website. You can go there and you can search your county, you can search a particular road, and you can find out what this project is supposed to be, whether or not the hearings have happened, whether a contract has been awarded, what the dates are. You're out frequently, I think, taking progress photos for a project that's midway. I mean, it is so much information that it is super cool to be able to figure it all out just by looking on your website.
Well, you just did the 30-second commercial for me, so I don't know that I have anything else to say here, but yeah, we did revamp the VDOT website. I think it's about 3 years ago now. There's a whole lot of complete new formats and a lot of places on the VDOT website, including our project pages. We've done our best to create them so that they're interesting to look at. Like you said, we try to do project updates during construction with up-to-date photos on some of the projects, especially the bigger ones. We have some links to videos, course information about public involvement for projects that are still in the near future and that sort of thing. And it's a lot of work keeping them up to date too, making sure it's updated. There's nothing worse than going to a web page and realizing after a couple of seconds, nobody's even looked at this in the last 6 months. You'll find that we try really hard to keep them up to date so that these pages are actually useful for folks that are looking for that kind of information.
And I appreciate it because I always try to make my show notes for this show as complete as possible. So whenever we record these shows, I go there and then I put the links in the bulleted list of here are the projects that we talked about. So people can just click and go right there, which makes it so much easier, I think, for them
Cool.
to get the information. Sometimes if you make it too complicated, people just don't even try. So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible.
We appreciate that because a lot of times folks just they want to have something they can bookmark, and especially if they have a personal interest in the project because it's close to them or affects their property or anything like that, or it's on their route, they want to be able to keep going back to it. So anytime you can share those links, we appreciate that.
Let's take a break. And when we come back, let's talk about a massive project that is going to happen in stages and in pieces. But Redbud Road starts the whole process. Can you give me an update and fill me in on what's about to happen there in the next segment?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. A lot of big changes coming in the Winchester area. Redbud's the first of that, and we'll be happy to talk about it.
We're going to do all of that when we come back. We are on the Zooms today with Ken Slack. He is the communication specialist for the Stanton District of VDOT. We're talking road projects and getting updates today. We're going to do more of that when we come back in just a couple of minutes.
This Tuesday, April Davis will change the world. She doesn't know that yet. All she knows is that she went to justserve.org and volunteered an hour of her time. Browsing through dozens of service opportunities in her community, April decided to spend her Tuesday evening serving dinner to mothers and their children at a transitional house. She doesn't know she'll be serving a particular mother and daughter who will be spending their first night in this home. April doesn't know that the hot meal she'll serve is the first this mother and daughter will have had in a week, or that the simple smile she'll offer as she serves them will help them realize that things are going to be all right. Which is why this Tuesday, April Davis will change the world. See the difference you can make. Sign up for service opportunities in your community. Visit justserve.org.
back to the Valley. Today, I am your host, Janet Michael. It is VDOT Day, so we are on the Zooms with Ken Slack. He is the communications specialist for the Stanton district of VDOT. We meet up with Ken every couple of months to get an update on road projects and find out what's going on. In the first segment, we got a status update for widening 81 at Strasburg and the Aranda Park and Ride. And I was joking with you too, Ken, before we got started, that as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm heading all the way to the other side of the world, otherwise known as the north end of Winchester. It feels like it's 3.5 hours away from my house in Middletown, but I'm
I picture
about to
you
pass
like
through.
saddling up your horse or something the way you're talking about it, but okay.
But I am going to pass through that intersection that I gotta say I've never heard anybody say anything nice about. But it's all going to change. It's going to get better. But the first step in that plan is relocating Redbud Road, right?
That is correct. Yeah. I mean, Redbud Road by itself is a decent sized project, but it's one that's needed to happen before we can do a lot more work on Interstate 81 and Exit 317. They are separate projects, but Redbud Road's sort of the first domino that's just started falling. But to give you the update on that, we did just start work right at the beginning of July. The contractor got underway with relocating a portion of Route 661 Redbud Road. It's in Frederick County. And it's basically the portion from the intersection at Milburn Road. Right now, Redbud winds around a little bit and comes out on Route 11, right next to I-81 there at exit 317. There's a reason we're moving that portion of Redbud Road. It's going to turn more toward the north and then come out on Snowden Boulevard. And the reason we're doing that is that when we make improvements there on I-81 and exit 317, where Redbud Road comes out now, at the end of Redbud and you're looking north, you're actually looking at the ramp to go from Route 11 onto northbound 81. And where you're sitting now on Redbud Road will be the off ramp if you're coming off of the interstate. I'm probably making this sound a little more complicated than it is, but basically the portion of Redbud that's moving is getting out of the way because we're reconfiguring that interchange at exit 317. So we've been talking for past few years now about a lot of these projects on I-81, widening in Stanton area, Harrisonburg, and folks in the Winchester area are like, when's it our turn? When's it happening up here? I've heard that a lot, including at the very recent public hearing we had in late June for the Winchester widening project. It's going to be split into a couple of different phases, but the northern portion of the I-81 widening through Winchester, it's a little bit more than 2 miles, going from about mile marker 317 to 319. That's going to be bundled with a pretty major redesign, reconstruction there of the exit 317. It's going to become a diverging diamond interchange. The nickname is a DDI, which sounds like an insect repellent of some kind, but diverging diamond interchange is a different configuration. We do have probably about a half dozen of them, 6 or 8 of them actually across the Commonwealth. I've driven through them on I-64 a little bit east of Charlottesville, and then there's one down in the Roanoke area that I've been on. I think Northern Virginia has a couple of them too. So some folks may have been through these, but it's a different kind of interchange where temporarily it feels like you might be driving on the wrong side of the road. But it's basically designed to handle more traffic and to keep people moving, reduces congestion. It also is a VDOT term for reducing conflict points. But that basically means it's safer because there are fewer places that you're going to potentially have collision points. That is also part of the project. And a little bit west of the interchange, there's going to be a new park and ride lot in between Welltown Road and Crown Lane. Part of those 2 roadways are going to be turned into one-way roads. So coming off of Route 11, going north on Welltown, and then coming south on Crown Lane. So there's a whole lot going on there. And Janet, you were talking about project pages. They do a lot better job than I just did in explaining that project. So,
I dug into
but
that after our last conversation and then got in the weeds, went down the rabbit hole on what this diamond interchange looks like. And it is the coolest thing ever from the aerial photos. But I'm thinking, I don't even know how to drive on something like that.
it is a different configuration. I think most folks probably remember the first time they drove through a roundabout and they were like, okay, this is new, but I'm going to just, if you trust the signs and trust the pavement markings, you'll be fine. And the same is true here. It's a different kind of interchange, but the project page does have a link to a simulation video so that you can see what it looks like, how folks drive through it, and a little bit about some of the reasons why it's a better design. The current configuration, traditional traffic signal that you see there, where 81 and 11 come together and it's really close to 37, And there's so many other intersections with all the different businesses there. It just can't handle that level of traffic anymore. And so this is going to be a big improvement. Of course, as with any improvement, there's that in between time of construction. But I think once it's all said and done, and folks are going to be like, oh, thank you. So at least we hope so.
I remember years and years ago, one of the very first shows that we did together was live in the studio. And it was it's funny that I think every single time we've had a conversation, I've referenced the bridges in Front Royal, but you were doing the new thing there between the bridges in Front Royal. And it was going to be a new traffic pattern. It was going to be something that
Yeah.
was a little different. And I think that now that it's been there all these years, I don't even remember what it was like before. It just seems natural to be driving it in that manner. Ideally, that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah, and probably will. We put a lot of emphasis into trying to do some public outreach and help explain to people why we're doing what we have there in the design plans, how it's going to be better. Yes, there will be some transition time. Same thing was true there in Front Royal. In between the South Fork and North Fork bridges, you have that big intersection with Route 34522 and then Route 55 that comes in from the east west. That was a really struggling intersection with that traditional traffic signal we put in a quadrant roadway interchange, a QRI. It's still the only one in Virginia, but almost immediately once it went into place, we did all kinds of different outreach, did in-person meetings all over the place, did simulation videos that we put out on YouTube and everything else. But it's been pretty quiet out there. The intersection performs really well. You see much less congestion than you used to. We've had very few accidents out there. And honestly, very few complaints, which is great too. So, and we think something like that will be the order of the day once folks get that transition time under their belts with the diverging diamond interchange there at exit 317.
I think people were worried, how would I get in and out of the 7-Eleven there in Front Royal? And does that mean that it's not going to get business anymore and it's going to close? It's as busy as I've ever seen it when I go through that way. So I don't think it had any of the impact. All the worries that people have, they just need to be a little patient and see how everything works out once the construction is done.
Yeah, and honestly, I found that over the years whenever we're doing some access management changes or a redesign, it's always about the details about this particular business. How do I get in and out? Or if I'm a business owner, how are folks going to find me and get in and out? Because obviously we don't want to put up literal or figurative roadblocks to anybody's business. So we work very closely with property owners throughout our right-of-way process, the design process, to make sure that we're not making things difficult for people. The intent is it's not just an experiment for our own amusement. We're trying to do something that's going to make it better for folks that are driving through, but also who have business or homes in that area.
I am 100% in favor of less conflict points.
That's true in all areas of life, not just transportation,
Right?
right?
Yes. This project, to be clear, is years and years long. This is the first stage, but there's going to be a lot of
Sure.
construction and it's going to take some time to transform that whole area there.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I probably should mention the schedule for all this going on in the Winchester area. The Redbud Road relocation is just getting underway. That should be finishing up in the fall of next year, fall of 27. Right around this time next year, we're hoping to be able to award a design build contract for all that work on the I-81 widening and the reconfiguration at exit 317, mid 27. And then probably late 27 or early 28 is when you would actually start seeing construction out there. And it is probably going to be a good 3, maybe 4 years worth of work out there. It's a lot of work and it will take some time, but probably 3 to 4 years worth of construction. And that's not even talking about the other widening, the southern portion of I-81 from about 312 to 317. That is going to be a little bit later, probably starting somewhere around 29 or 2030.
And we didn't even touch on the Millwood bridge replacement and all of the things that are going to happen there at 522 and everything else. That's yet another project that is going to be happening at some point in the next couple of years.
Yeah, we are just about ready to open the bids for the construction bids. It has been advertised for the what we call the Millwoods. It's a Millwood Pike project just outside the city limits of Winchester and Millwood Avenue inside the city limits. It's a bundle of projects like what we were just talking about on the north end, but it includes replacing that huge bridge that carries Millwood Pike / Millwood Avenue over Interstate 81. It's a 7-lane wide bridge right now, and it's going to be 9 lanes when it's rebuilt. The new one is going to be built slightly on a different alignment so that we're not having to try to do construction and moving traffic back and forth in phases. So,
Thank you
but
for
it's
that.
construction still is going to be a challenge. This is a very busy portion of roadway that carries Route 17, 522, Route 50. They all converge on that part of Millwood. So it's going to be an important project, but it will be a challenge during a few years of construction there as well.
Hey, I'm telling you, 2 words, Crossover Boulevard, my friends. Use Crossover
Yeah,
Boulevard and come 522 to get to wherever you need to go on that side of town.
yeah, that one opened just a couple of years ago, and that's going to be a big help for helping minimize some of that congestion that the construction inevitably is going to create some, but having another way over I-81 is going to help a lot.
And I don't want to let you go without touching for a minute on work zone safety, because when we're talking about all these construction projects, you're not using robots out there on the roads actually doing some of this work. These are human beings that, in some cases, are putting their lives on the line in order to get these road projects done. And we as drivers need to be way more cognizant of where they are, following speed zones. We need to be a whole lot more careful coming through some of these work zones.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been talking a lot about interstate projects and some of the main roads like 11 and 17 and stuff like that. But still, the vast majority of the work that we're doing out there are on our secondary roads and on some of the less traveled roads with our maintenance projects that go on all the time, anything from pothole patching to clearing ditches, replacing drainage pipes, cutting brush along the side of the roadway, mowing. All those kinds of operations have VDOT crews and in some cases contractors out there day in and day out. And just like you and I, Janet, and everybody that's listening, we have a simple expectation. I want to put in an honest day's work and I want to go home safely to my family. I should be able to do that. And the folks that are working on our roadways, that's all they ask. When you see the orange signs and lane closures and things like that, it feels inconvenient, but it's for your safety and it's for theirs. And it's putting that phone down, bringing your speed down, and putting 100% of your focus on the road is not really that big a deal in the scheme of things. It's not going to slow you down that much, but give our folks a break, as they say, and help make sure they get home to their families just like you expect to.
Captain Gosnell from the Frederick County Sheriff's Office does a show with me every month, and we've done several talking about speeding. And he's done the math on if you just go 5 miles over the speed limit, how much quicker that does or does not get you to where you need to go. And it's just not worth the math. The math doesn't math when you factor in things like there are humans on these roadways that are working that, again, like you said, deserve to go home to their families at the end of the day.
And same thing is true when you come up on a work zone where somebody has that flag or paddle and you're having to sit there for a little bit. When you're sitting there not moving, yes, it feels like you're there a long time, but generally you're talking a couple of minutes. But those folks take a lot of abuse. They get cussed at, they get things thrown at them sometimes. And sometimes folks just aren't paying attention. I've heard way too many stories of folks that have had to just jump over a guardrail to avoid getting hit by vehicles and things. So it unfortunately happens a lot more than you might expect. And nobody should have to go through that. We take all the reasonable precautions with the flashing lights and the signs. Hard to miss the blaze orange, you'd think, but it's amazing how often people say, I didn't see any signs. Well, you just drove past 6 of them. But when you get a chance to talk to the VDOT crews, I work in an office most of the time, I'll be honest. But there are times when I'm out there working, getting photos or video, or talking to folks that are in a work zone and they're a few feet away from traffic that's just barreling by, and they take that risk all the time. We take a lot of precautions to set up the work zones properly, make sure our folks are using the proper gear, watching each other's backs and that sort of thing. But we share that responsibility with drivers like you. So let's partner on this to help make sure you stay safe and that our folks do too.
This may come as a surprise to you, but I always smile and wave while I'm sitting there or when I'm coming through the other side, because I would not in a million years want to do that job. So I am grateful to those that will.
Thank you, Janet. Appreciate that.
And thank you for taking the time to give me an update on all of the cool, fun projects that are about to descend upon Winchester.
Yeah, by the time we talk again, we hope to have a contract and it's a little more about what's happening next on that whole bundle of projects around Millwood Pike there at exit 313. So stay tuned for that.
You heard him. And I will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of The Valley Today, just a few minutes after noon. So meet me here then.